We're going to jump over to John right now. John, if you would like to do the same, introduce yourself and your organization. And I like this idea of these presentations. This is wonderful because it really gives a lot of information that people have asked in questions. And so I'm happy to have you. Happy to have you chat. Okay, is John there? Oop.
He's on mute.
I unmuted. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I do that all the time. Matt, thank you very much for the opportunity to make the presentation. And I enjoyed listening to Ernie's presentation. And then I heard John Berg's presentation at the Walnut Creek Walnut Creek City Council last night. I'd also like to thank Catherine Horn from EBMUD, who I work with closely, and she keeps me in line with texts and saying, "Oh, you're wrong on that question," or whatever else. But she put the deck together, and so I'd like to thank her for all her hard work in this area. A little bit about me: I'm a sixth-generation Bay Arean, and very proud. I've lived and resided, except for the times in college, in Contra Costa County as a whole. In fact, lived in Walnut Creek for a number of years, and even more locally, what once was Delvia High School, I went there. And obviously everybody who lives in Walnut Creek knows that that is now closed. So I'll be talking about a number of things today, and I'm going to try and follow up on some of the points that Ernie made to complement this. Catherine, if we can go to the next slide, that would be great. Our water, we're very fortunate. 93% of our water comes from the Sierra Nevada mountains. So put it in perspective, if you're at Bear Valley Ski Resort and look north, and if you're at Kirkwood Ski Resort and look south, that's our watershed. It flows into Pardee Reservoir, which then goes across on the McCullum Aqueducts over 90 miles to Warkey Park and Walnut Creek, our main treatment plant. Then it gets distributed from that point in time. And so we're very fortunate, and about 7% of our water is local runoff into such as San Leandros, Briones, reservoirs, and so on. Next slide, please. So to give you a perspective, this highlights our service area. We're 98 years old as an agency when we were actually formed, and we have over 4,200 miles of pipeline. So put it in perspective, it's basically driving from Oakland, San Francisco to New York and back, and that's the amount of pipelines that we're required to maintain. In fact, even though our agency is almost 100 years old, some of our parts of our system are up to 150 years old from areas that we inherited when EBMUD formed and grew. So we have 5 local reservoirs and 6 water treatment. We also do wastewater, but that's on the other side of the hill. And rather than spending time on that, I will just go on to the next slide. Our current situation. So where we are today, the gray bars represent our maximum carry over storage, which is 635,000 acre feet is our goal. And we look at the end of September on how much water we'll have in storage. We're forecasting 435,000 acre feet. It's actually gone up 10,000 acre feet from 1 month ago, in part due to the conservation efforts that people have really employed. So to put it in perspective, in August, we conserved 9% of what we used the year before. And in July, it was 8.5% from the year before. And I also want to sort of tie in to put this in perspective, because we always hear during a drought, you got to stop all the buildings and houses and business and industry. Our drought of all droughts was 1976. Now it's probably going to change to another time period in the near future. But our population is up by 1/3. Our water usage is down by nearly 50% from what it was in 1976. And because of people's long-term ability to conserve water, even though we're in a drought now, we were basically in a drought last year too, we're able to be at a reasonable point in time compared to the 2014, 2015 timeframe. Now, we're also going to be bringing in water from our Central Valley Project allocation, and that's going to start in September, and we'll be bringing that into the district as well, because we do not know in 2022 what kind of water year it's going to be. I hope it's extremely wet and a lot of snow, but we don't know. And if we're to assume that it is and it isn't, then we're putting all our customers, whether they be residential or businesses, at a disadvantage, and that's not good public policy. Next slide, please. So we're at stage 1 of our drought, and we're at a voluntary 10% reduction. And we're, as I pointed out, we hit 9% in the month of August, and I expect we're going to continue to increase each month. Our customers, when we've asked in the past, like at CCWD, have stepped up to the plate. They've done a phenomenal job in terms of conserving water and looking at this as a community as a whole and what we need to do in order to try and avoid getting into stages, in particular stages 3 and 4. And those are the areas that we don't want to get into, not only because of the amount of mandatory rationing, but really it's putting our total system storage in jeopardy when we're getting below a certain point of acre feet. And again, not knowing what the next year is going to bring. And we'll be talking about that today. And then next slide, please. So we're asking, similar to CCWD, what do you do to save water? Well, irrigate efficiently. You don't need to irrigate every day. But the key measure for a lot of people, I tell them, is if you have water going into your gutter, you're watering too much. Water early morning, late at night. Not only are the energy prices lower for filling our reservoirs, but the water sits in the ground for a longer period of time, and it's better for the plants. Find and fix a leak. If you have a leak in your business or your home, fix it. And what I always need to tell people, if you have a leak and you get it fixed and a plumber, you have an invoice, let's say your water bill is $100 and normally for that 2-month period, and you get a bill for $400, the dip variable is $200, $300. What we'll do is we'll go back and look at your past record of what it was a year before, and your current record show that it's fixed. In a $300 delta, we will split on half of it. So you get a $150 credit off of the bill towards your next bill in order to having fixed your leak. And also be mindful how much you use in indoor use. Now, yes, most of our water in this part of the district is for outdoor consumption, especially in summer, not unsimilar to CCWDs. We're telling people to really take a 5-minute shower or less. In the key, I know we've had on the Facebook and other social media outlets is play a song or sing a song for 5 minutes. In my case, I'm not going to sing because I would scare the neighbors and my wife. So what you want to do is get a song that's 5 minutes or less, play it, and that's how long you should maintain your shower, and no longer than that. And you're going to be amazed on how much water you actually end up saving. Catherine, next slide, please. So we have for commercial up to $15,000 landscape rebates. We have $1,500 for single family homes. What we require is before you go out and decide you're going to take out your sod and put in something that is more drought tolerant, get it approved by our staff. We'll come out, we'll meet with you. And that way we can verify how much what you're doing and what the situation was before you ripped out potentially a lot of lawn and put in more drought tolerant landscape. We do on-site water surveys, we have water budgets, and we also have Water Smart certified businesses. And every year, those businesses who really stepped up to the plate and did a phenomenal job, we have a board meeting. We used to ask when we met in person, hopefully again in the near future, they would be welcomed and congratulated for their efforts. Next slide, please. So we're looking at new tools for the modern drought response. We have smart meters, and we're putting more of those in. And really with smart meters, great, because it will tell somebody, you may have a leak, and we'll get a notification. You can look on your iPhone or iPad, and all of a sudden your usage goes up, but you don't see any water anywhere. It could be an underground leak under your house or in the ground and part of your landscaping you don't normally see. That enables you to be able to say there's a leak, our usage hasn't gone up by that amount, and get it fixed ASAP. We've been doing webinar series on Facebook as well, and they've been very popular as well. And what we're really trying to do is get people to also do the native plants, because the native plants are important for our environment, as well as, they use less water in addition to that. Next slide, please. So these are some of the projects we have undergoing in my ward, which is Matt talked about Ward 2, and he gave the geographic area. We have some major projects that are ongoing, and Brian talked a little bit, mentioned Leland Reservoir, that's in Lafayette, almost near the Walnut Creek border. We're actually taking it's a large reservoir out of commission for a couple of reasons. One, it needs to for OSHA compliance. There's issues. It's a very old reservoir built in the 1950s, but it's too large. And you're probably thinking, well, no reservoir can be too large. They can. And if it's too large, the water quality and the reservoir changes. And then complaints will come to myself or other members of the board saying my water tastes funny. And if the water is not being flushed through quick enough in a reservoir, it changes the chemistry of the water, does change, and it has an impact. So we're going to be actually, in some cases, shrinking our reservoirs where they need to be updated anyways in terms of meeting compliance issues. And Leland Reservoir in Lafayette is just exactly one of those. But we have about 64% of our budget, our rates, is designed for infrastructure updates or paying on the debt capital of what we're doing for infrastructure updates. As I said, some of our system is about 150 years old, and the lifespan of most pipes is about 70 years. And so what we're trying to do is stay ahead of the curve. And as Ernie can attest, if you have a major pipe break and that water from your reservoir, drinking water, gets into a creek, you're going to be fined by the Regional Water Board. And there have been cases where fines have been requested up to $500,000. That's ratepayer money that the ratepayers are paying for for us not to maintain our infrastructure. So it's really critical, not only from a good standpoint of, well, for fiscal responsibility, but from an environmental standpoint, especially in a drought. The last thing people want to see is a broken pipe and water running down the street, and it's our water. And when that does happen, I guarantee you in a drought, I do get the phone calls and emails on that. Catherine, next slide, please. So recycled water, we're doing more. We have some projects. Matt talked about Durawa. That was a project we formed with DSRSD, about 25 plus years ago. And our biggest problem is actually we don't have enough wastewater to be treated out of the Dublin Santa Maria Services District treatment facility. So we entered into an agreement with Contra Costa Central Sand to take some of their product in the southern part of their district, and they have first right of refusal. So when they need it, they can take it again. But we don't have enough wastewater to be able to treat to meet the demand for recycled water in for example, the San Ramon Valley. The RARE project, for example, is also one we did with Chevron Refinery. And Chevron Refinery is actually our largest consumer of water of any entity within our service area. So we need to do more. And I'm going to be very blunt. We in Northern California are hypocrites when we talk about water and recycled water. Southern California has done a much better job, especially in Orange County and parts of the desert, much out of necessity. And ours hasn't been that way, but we're moving in that direction. And so recycled water is going to become a larger player in exactly what we need to do. And so that's where we are, and that's where we're going to be heading going into the future. Next slide, please. So we're planning for the uncertainties, looking at our long-term water supply. We do know that our population will continue to grow. As with CCWD, we work with ABAG in each city on the numbers on population expected growth to make sure we have the water availability. One thing I'm very excited about, actually today at our board meeting, we're going to be approving the Joint Powers Authority with CCWD for Los Vaqueros. I think it's phenomenal. You know, anybody who's followed the water history between Contra Costa Water District and East EBMUD going back a number of years, at one point in time, we didn't talk to each other, and we did. It was not very friendly. Things have changed. I think all the agencies have realized that we need to work together in order to solve the problems. We cannot do it all alone and by ourselves. And this is a perfect example of Los Vaqueros expansion. It's the right thing. It's the right time. And I'm glad that we're moving forward. And I'm actually hoping that on the JPA, that I will be the appointed representative from East EBMUD to the Joint Powers Authority. But because of the Brown Act, I can't talk to the board members about it. So I'll see how the dialogue goes this afternoon. Next slide, please. If we can go back one more. I know talking desalinization. Everybody always asks about desalinization. It is a component of what we need to be doing. And we're looking at that with a number of agencies, including CCWD. I am, quite frankly, a little tired of how long we've been talking about it. We need to come to terms and make a decision. And I hope it's a decision that we move in that direction of doing a desal project, again, with a number of agencies. It is our insurance policy, and it's an important insurance policy because there's the water available there. There's also the technology, and I know a lot of people talk about, well, it's very energy intensive. Yes, it is. They've also improved the membrane technology, which is helping reduce the energy need. But if you look at what they're doing in Australia and the Middle East, they are now creating desal facilities that are net neutral in terms of energy, whether they get their power from wind, solar, or tidal motion. It can be done. And where we're looking at potentially having a facility in the East Contra Costa County out on the Delta, there's a lot of wind out there, and there's an opportunity to create a model desal project for California and for our region that is actually net neutral on energy use and will meet long-term needs. Again, it's an insurance policy. You need to think of water as a chair, and you can't have a chair with one leg. And people say just build more storage. Well, that's not always easy. No, there are legal sometimes constraints to what can be done. But that one chair, one leg in itself isn't part of it. Conservation is part of it. Recycled water is part of it, and hopefully desal. So if you have more legs on your chair, it's going to be more stable, and you'll have a more diversified water portfolio, which will allow for greater security in times of drought. Next slide, please. We've been very lucky this year, and hopefully we'll be lucky until the rains begin, not having public safety power shutoffs, PSPSs that happen with PG&E. PG&E works with us. They let us know ahead of time where they're going to be looking at turning off a region. And we have bought, and we're also leasing mobile generators that we can move to a pumping plant. So in the event that power is going to be shut off, we can then still move water to our water tanks to make sure that they can go to homes and businesses. Our biggest concern is during a PSPS, if it's in for an extended period of time, that we're putting life and safety and property in jeopardy in the event of an emergency, local fire emergency. We need to make sure that the firefighters have the capability to get the water to fight the fires at the same time that business can continue to operate. And we just ask when a PSPS is called that you please look at doing the reduce your water usage, but you don't have to stop, but just reduce it during that period of time. And so that is where we're going with that. And next slide, please. So we can go into any questions that we may have. And I guess I'm going to pass it back over to you, Matt. Again, I'd like to just thank the Chamber for the opportunity to talk today. It's an honor to represent all of you, and very grateful for that opportunity. Over the time of years when I started, I had a lot of hair and it was dark. I have less hair and it's not dark now. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, John. And thank you, Ernie.